Amazing black girl reveals incredible dream, buying a dad from a billionaire store owner. Maya Johnson stood by the window, watching the sun set behind the sprawling subdivisions of her Atlanta suburb, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Just a week ago, the town had erupted in chatter about Mr. Bennett's bizarre new store that promised kids the ultimate experience, the perfect dad. Friends her age laughed as they wandered past the storefront, rolling their eyes at the absurdity, but deep down, Maya felt a twist of envy and longing. Her mother worked double shifts, pouring her heart into keeping their dreams alive while dealing with a situation that Maya often felt eclipsed her own aspirations. The hollow absence of a father shaped her identity, leaving a void as vast as the sky outside. Every day was a struggle between wanting to honor her mother's sacrifices and a desperate need for paternal love that became more palpable with every mocking joke about Mr. Bennett's peculiar offer. Maya's teacher, Mr. Roberts, had always believed in her potential. He constantly reminded her of the scholarship she could earn, an opportunity that might change everything for her and her mother. "Just focus on your studies, Maya," he'd say, and she wanted so desperately to succeed. But as her classmates whispered and joked, their laughter pinpricked her resolve. Was pursuing a warped idea of family worth aligning herself with something so many considered ludicrous? Before she could wrestle further with her thoughts, a flood of doubt crashed over her. The other kids weren't looking for approval, they were searching for connection. Did that make them weak, or was it simply human? Maya's fingers toyed with the edges of her notebook, tracing the outline of her dreams, and her heart raced as she silently questioned whether she too could slip into the comfortable fiction of having a father figure, even if it came with a price tag. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Maya felt a surge of disappointment. How could she abandon her mother's sacrifices for a hollow connection? That's when her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend, Taisha. "Are you in or out?" The simple question loomed large and ominous. In would mean risking everything she went through to be proud of herself. Out would uphold her mother's dignity and the strength of their bond. She stared at her reflection in the window, her own face a mixture of resolve and despair. Would she choose the unconventional leg up that offered a distorted version of family? The fear of judgment was a heavy weight, but the longing for something, anything to fill that emptiness was suffocating. Caught in that spiraling turmoil, Maya trembled with indecision, faced with the reality that demanded sacrifices she was no longer sure she wanted to make. As her heart raced and her mind battled with her societal conscience, the tension inside her thickened. With her future hanging in the balance, how would she navigate the treacherous waters of love, identity, and integrity? Maya was on the brink of a precipice, her next choice poised to shape the trajectory of her life and her mother's, gripping tightly to the threads of what family truly meant. The air vibrated with a charged energy. Her dreams felt both close enough to touch and unbearably out of reach. Would she be the girl who bought a dad, or the one who remained true to her heart? The question of who she really was echoed through her mind, leaving a stirring uncertainty that could shatter her world in the blink of an eye. Maya inhaled deeply, her chest tightening as she weighed her options. Each heartbeat became a reminder of her reality, the absence, the void that rendered herself and her life seemingly incomplete. The laughter of her peers still echoed in her ears, a haunting melody that played along with her doubts. She clutched her phone tighter, her fingers trembling as she reread Taisha's text. The words felt insidiously alive, a taunt challenging her to decide quickly and decisively. As the golden glow of the sunset faded, she retreated from the window, concerned that self-reflection would plunge her deeper into angst. She rummaged through her cluttered desk, searching for distraction in her schoolwork. But no amount of algebra could eclipse the gnawing thoughts about what Mr. Bennet was offering. Did having a father, even one that was just a purchase, really mean she could forge a better life? Or would it taint the sanctity of her relationship with her mother? She picked up her notebook, flipping through pages filled with dreams. A scholarship to a prestigious university, a career that would lift her family from their struggles. Yet each ambition was shadowed by the ever-present question of connection. Was success worth the price of isolation? In that moment of contemplation, a flicker of anger ignited within her. She felt betrayed, not by her mother, but by the idea that her worth could hang on the illusion of a father figure. Instead of feeling weak for wanting affection, she began feeling empowered by her current reality. She was surviving without that paternal figure. She was building resilience, learning to navigate life with the tools she had. Suddenly, clarity began to wash over her. She didn't need to buy a dad. Instead, maybe she could redefine what family meant to her. She could foster relationships with people who genuinely cared. The thought sent a surge of hope through her veins, lighting a fire that warmed her heart. Determined to transform uncertainty into actionable steps, Maya sprang into action. She texted Taisha back, a flick of determination threading through her thumbs as she encapsulated her resolve into words. Out, I'm not buying into that. Each tap felt liberating, as if releasing a burden that had weighed heavily on her soul. But beneath that newfound confidence simmered a pool of anxiety. What would her classmates say? Would their judgment sting harder than the idea of participating in an absurd charade? She tucked her phone away, squarely resisting the urge to second-guess herself. The next morning at school felt different. Maya engaged in conversations, sat with her classmates, and focused more on her studies. Yet vulnerability loomed large. The fear of alienation from her peers was a cloud hovering just above her, ready to cast shadows over her decisions. She wondered if the invitation to join the store adventure would slip through her fingers, a choice that could make her the subject of gossip or create deeper divisions. During lunch, Maya overheard snippets of laughter and excitement from the nearby table, a group discussing their plans for the dad experience. The apprehension surged within her. It would be easy to join them, to become part of a fleeting fantasy. But reflecting on each joke and the laughter that followed darkened her perspective rather than lifting it. That day, amidst the chatter and amidst the casual camaraderie, Maya began sketching the outline of her strategy. What if she could channel this struggle into something that mattered? She could document her feelings, transform her experiences into poetry, or perhaps even start a blog. As she nibbled on her sandwich, she made a silent vow. She would use this journey, one of exploration into identity and family, to become stronger, smarter, and more authentic. Her heart raced at the possibilities ahead, brimming with creativity and passion, and for the first time in a long time, hope flickered brightly before her. The moment felt like a juncture, no longer torn between worlds, but on the path of self-discovery. Would she step confidently into a new realm of self-definition and belonging, or would she still be haunted by what she thought she could have? As she left the cafeteria, her resolve hardened, though uncertainty lingered in the corners of her mind. To confront the essence of her identity fully and unflinchingly was the true challenge ahead. Would she dare to unravel what family meant to her on her own terms? She quickened her pace, determination coursing through her. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but the urgency to define herself, to create her own narrative, pulsed profoundly within her. And as she stepped into that bright hallway, she could almost feel the winds of change at her back. But the question remained: how would she face the inevitable confrontations that lay ahead, both within herself and in the judgments of her peers? Only time would tell which choice would ultimately shape her burgeoning identity. Maya stood at the threshold of her classroom, her mind racing with the possibilities that both excited and terrified her. The familiar hum of conversations filled the air, but underneath it all lay a current of doubt. What if she shared too much or too little? Would her attempts at authenticity be welcomed, or would they be seen as a desperate plea for attention? Still clinging to her vision of using her experiences as fuel for growth, she found herself drawn to a blank slate, a notebook waiting for her next words. After class, Maya retreated to a quiet corner of the library, seeking solace among the stacks of books. She pulled out her laptop and began typing her thoughts, her journey, her struggles, and the conflicting feelings about family and connection. It felt therapeutic, almost as if she were weaving together the frayed threads of her identity. Each keystroke became a declaration, a movement towards clarity. This was more than just a project. It was a chance to reclaim her narrative. With each word, she no longer felt like an outsider, a girl wrestling with the shadows of her reality. Instead, she envisioned herself as an architect, shaping a foundation for her future. Her fingers danced across the keyboard as ideas blossomed. "What if I create a blog?" she mused aloud, her heart racing at the thought. A space where she could reveal her innermost thoughts, experiences, and aspirations, free from the fear of judgment. However, her excitement was soon met by a harsh whisper of doubt. What if her voice didn't resonate? What if she failed to connect? She paused, her eyes drifting to the rows of books lining the shelves, a testament to countless stories and the power of sharing one's truth. Maya drew a deep breath, knowing her words had value. They could inspire, connect, and perhaps even transform not just herself, but those who read them. Reinvigorated, Maya spent hours crafting her blog's first entry, a document of determination promising to unveil her journey of navigating identity, family, and the heart's longing for connection. Each paragraph flowed with raw honesty, revealing her fears while showcasing her resilience. Yet she hesitated before hitting publish. It was not just a post. It was a piece of her soul laid bare for the world to dissect. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the library in soft shades of orange and gold, Maya clicked publish. The emotional release was palpable, a blend of relief and anxiety. What reactions would she face? Leaving the library that evening, she felt lighter, yet aware of the stirring anticipation within her. She had committed to her truth, and now there was no retreat. That night, her mind was abuzz with thoughts of the blog's potential. What if it resonated with someone? What if she sparked conversations about the complexities of family dynamics? School the next day felt different. She walked the halls with an air of quiet confidence, holding tightly to her newfound purpose. But as she saw groups huddled together, gossiping and laughing, a chill ran down her spine. Would they ridicule her for baring her soul? Would her classmates understand the motivations behind her desire to redefine family? During lunch, she focused on her friends. Taisha was animatedly discussing college applications, surrounded by a group of giggly girls, while others were waving at each other from various tables. It struck Maya that every face around her was just as complicated, possibly battling their own internal conflicts. In that moment, she realized her journey was not solitary. It was part of a larger human experience. Taking a leap of faith, she decided to share her blog with Taisha and the group, prepared for their response. "Hey everyone," she said, her voice ringing with newfound conviction. I started a blog about, well, family and identity. I think we all have stories worth telling. The collective silence was palpable, the anticipation of what would follow pressing down like a weight. Would they welcome her? Would her vulnerability bolster others to share their truths? But before she could mentally prepare for the reactions, she felt a tightening in her chest. The fear that had lurked in the shadows resurfaced, growing heavier and more formidable. The reaction was imminent, and with it came a realization. Exposing one's truth can be daunting, yet it also holds the potential for unprecedented personal growth. Would her bravery be met with acceptance or judgment? As their gazes lingered on her, anticipation hung thick in the air, and Maya faced the inevitable crossroads of vulnerability and connection. Was she about to unlock deeper relationships, or would her raw honesty push them further away? The tension built within her, and in that moment, she understood that the battle for her identity was just beginning. She took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever came next. Maya's heart raced as she scanned the faces of her friends. Taisha's expression flickered between surprise and curiosity, while the glimmers of judgment in some eyes made her stomach churn. Each second felt like an eternity, amplified by the swirling doubts in her mind. Had she misread the room? Was this leap into authenticity a mistaken misstep? "That's cool, Maya," Taisha broke the silence, leaning in with genuine interest. "What have you written about so far?" Encouraged by Taisha's warmth, Maya felt a flush of relief wash over her. "Well, I wrote about my experiences growing up and how I've been trying to figure out what family means to me," she explained, careful to maintain her composure. The words streamed out more freely than she anticipated, coated with the courage she had mustered just moments before. Another friend chimed in, "Do you think you'll talk about buying a dad or something? Like," she paused, evidently grappling for the right words, "more radical ideas too?" That question hit home. There was an uncharted territory she was eager to explore, but the notion felt jarring when she imagined articulating it starkly, her desire for paternal connection and the struggles wrapped in her family narrative. Could she really extend her vulnerability to that level? Maya's thoughts were interrupted as others began to share snippets of their own complicated family stories. The conversation shifted, weaving between anecdotes of love, loss, and the nuances that made each experience unique. They collectively formed a tapestry of shared struggles, illuminating the interconnectedness of their identities. In this unexpected moment, vulnerability became not an isolated expression, but a bridge from one heart to another. The lunch bell rang, pulling Maya back into reality. As her friends began to disperse, a sense of exhilaration mingled with anxiety coursed through her veins. This interaction solidified that her words hadn't only floated into a void, they created ripples. Perhaps the risk of authenticity opened a door she didn't even know existed. As days turned into weeks, Maya noticed a gradual shift in her interactions. Fellow students often approached her, sharing their thoughts about her blog posts. Some even opened up about their family challenges, inviting her into their narratives. With each exchange, Maya's resolve deepened. Her writing was not only a means of self-exploration, but served as a catalyst for connection and the recognition of shared human experiences. Yet, as the digital world embraced her voice, Maya also encountered criticism online. Anonymity had gifted trolls the audacity to dismiss her feelings or mock her ideas. Each hurtful comment felt like a punch to the gut, igniting insecurities. Was it foolish to think her experiences were significant enough to warrant attention? Sitting in her room one night, Maya's mind whirled around self-doubt. She kept her laptop closed, unable to continue writing, wrestling with the fear that her vulnerability had become a target, not a strength. The anxious thoughts painted a picture of isolation despite the growing number of voices around her, creating a paradox of connection yet feeling utterly alone. Driven by an inner fire, she pulled out her notebook and began jotting down her feelings. It was cathartic, a necessary exercise to confront the overwhelming tide of negativity. But in those moments, she also recognized something crucial. She wanted to transition from being reactive to becoming proactive. Rather than defend her story, she could redefine her narrative. It dawned on her, the criticism didn't diminish her experiences. It merely affirmed the relevance of her voice and the necessity of her journey. Instead of retreating into silence, she resolved to articulate her truths with even greater clarity while navigating the complexities of feedback. But first, she needed to confront the negative sentiments head-on, perhaps discovering the strength to engage with her detractors or formulate a counter-narrative that celebrated her brand of authenticity. Maya looked in the mirror, her expression shifting with determination. The time had come, she whispered to her reflection, to face the critics and take control of my voice. Clenching her fists, she made a plan, to write a heartfelt response, not just to her critics, but also to herself, reaffirming her worth, her journey, and her insights. With resolve crystallizing in her core, she hovered over the keyboard, prepared to wield her words like a sword, ready to reclaim her narrative from both admirers and antagonists alike. What would she confront next as she prepared to dive into the heart of her challenges head-on? Maya's fingers hovered above the keyboard, her mind teeming with thoughts not yet articulated. The silence of her room felt charged with possibility, and for the first time in weeks, she was embracing the chaos within rather than retreating from it. She had a plan. She wouldn't just respond to her critics, she would reshape her narrative into something that laid bare her truths and aspirations. As she started typing, the words spilled out like water from a broken dam. "It's true," she wrote, "I've considered purchasing a dad, in every metaphorical sense. Why? Because the void in my heart begs to be filled, and the desire for connection is universal." There was something liberating about acknowledging this wish out loud, even in the virtual space of her blog, as if validating her own experiences would grant her more strength. The rationale behind her ambition wasn't lost on her, nor was it an impulse born from whimsy. It was rooted in the authentic ache for paternal guidance, validation, and warmth that many sought but seldom spoke about. She wrote about moments where societal norms failed to deliver the kind of support one needed, the myths surrounding fatherhood, and the varied forms love can take. This resonated deeply within her, and suddenly it felt like she was speaking on behalf of countless others who harbored similar dreams but were too afraid to voice them. With each paragraph, Maya experienced a cathartic release, and her resolve solidified even further. This act of accountability to herself became a source of great strength instead of vulnerability. Still, as she shared her dream, she braced herself. Would opening this door invite more backlash, or would it foster understanding? After completing her draft, Maya sat back and drafted the response to the trolls. She confronted the negativity head-on. Rather than react with anger, she chose to invoke compassion. While it may seem absurd to some, the longing for connection, acceptance, and family is entirely legitimate. Rejecting judgment opens the door for authentic conversations. Each sentence was an assertion of her identity and mission. She stood tall against the weight of anonymous critiques. With newfound confidence, she felt a sense of community beginning to form around her, rooted in authenticity. Before hitting publish, she remembered Taisha's encouragement. Each kind word was a stitch in the fabric of her narrative. Buoyed by the support from friends and newfound connections, Maya shared her article on social media, hoping to spark deeper discussions. By choosing to open up about the complexities of familial longing, she fortified her connection with others drawn to the same themes. As she stared at the screen, waiting for the inevitable flood of responses, her heart raced with anticipation and trepidation. What if the pushback was more severe this time? Was she prepared to handle it? Yet alongside this anxiety was a thrill she had never felt before, a feeling of taking ownership over her story. The reflections of her peers' own familial histories echoed in her mind, bouncing around like flares of encouragement. Their acceptance had become a tapestry woven with shared vulnerabilities. Maya felt a weight lift as the document was sent into the vastness of the internet, though she realized her journey was only beginning. She knew she had to brace herself for whatever response came next. The moment felt monumental, yet a flicker of new uncertainties loomed over the horizon. What consequences might this newfound visibility bring? Could she reconcile her dreams with her present reality? Or would the next wave of feedback knock down the very foundation she was struggling to build? In this whirlwind of thoughts, one question pierced through all the noise. How far was she willing to go to fight for her dreams? Or would she fold under the pressure of expectations? Maya's heart raced as she clicked to publish her blog post, the finality of the action weighing heavily on her. She watched as the notifications slowly began to light up her screen, likes, shares, and comments rolling in like the tide. With each approving ping, confidence seeped back into her veins. But then the inevitable ripple of disapproval crashed through. Harsh comments mingled with encouragement, wrapping around her like a warm blanket with thorns. The world needs strong opinions, but how do I handle the backlash? She whispered to herself, her posture slipping slightly as doubt crept in. She scrolled through the responses, heart sinking at the jabs that punctuated some of the dialogue. Questions about her sanity and motives made her stomach churn. Why was opening herself up to this? Hadn't she just claimed her narrative? Yet, staring at the screen, she found herself weighing the negatives against the positives, trying to calculate her next move. Maya's eyes landed on a particularly stinging comment. Why would anyone want to buy a dad? Desperate much? Breathing deeply, she realized this wasn't just about facing her critics, it was a test of her resolve. Rather than fire back defensively, recalling Taisha's words about seeking clarity and conflict, she decided on a different approach. Crafting a thoughtful response, she highlighted her intent and the deeper issues behind her yearning. Desperation can often lead to discovery, she typed, and I strive not to hide behind societal norms that dictate how our relationships should unfold. We all crave understanding, and sometimes that manifests in unconventional ways. Hitting send, she felt fortified by her honesty, internalizing her choice as a pivotal step forward. Responding to the trolls had morphed from obligatory defense to a declaration of strength. Maya decided she would not shy away. Instead, she would engage and educate whenever possible, challenging prejudices while asserting her truth. With every comment, she began transforming her bubble of anxiety into an arena for dialogue. The act of responding in an open, vulnerable manner shifted the atmosphere in the comments section. Her exchanges with followers began to feel empowering. Conversations sprouted, questions sparked curiosity, and several readers shared similar experiences that mirrored her own. This was the connection she had longed for, the sense that her experiences resonated with others and could foster a collective understanding. In the days that followed, her post continued to attract attention. Invitations to participate in local discussions, webinars, and even small podcasts dotted her calendar. Was she ready to step into the public eye? Maya could feel the momentum shifting. The anxiety within her morphed into a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. Wasn't she still brushing up against that lingering doubt? Yet, every new opportunity felt like an essential piece of her identity burgeoning forth. Despite the positive momentum, shadows of doubt lingered. What would happen when people began expecting more from her? With an ever-burgeoning audience came the nuances of public perception. Her actions, her words, her very identity would be under constant scrutiny. Maya knew her journey was not just about sharing her dream. It was an evolution of her own understanding and the reclamation of her narrative. But lurking behind her newfound visibility and engagement was a tension. The pressure to be a role model, to embody the change she sought, and to reconcile what that would mean for her authentic self. Sitting at her desk, cluttered with notes of ideas and plans to address these upcoming opportunities, she questioned if she was embracing growth or simply cultivating new insecurities. Only time would tell if this fire within her would kindle something genuine, or if she would burn out under the weight of expectation to remain the voice of her generation. Suddenly, a direct message pinged. It was from a well-known podcaster whose show centered on unconventional stories of self-discovery and challenges. They wanted to feature her, and it would air live. This is it, she thought, the thrill of opportunity colliding with the fear of exposure. Would she seize the moment and speak her truth, or would she hesitate, allowing doubt to snuff out her flame? Maya sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face in the dim light of the late evening. The direct message from the podcaster resonated in her mind, flickering between excitement and an all-consuming dread. This was a pivotal moment, one that could amplify her voice or expose her vulnerabilities. Her heartbeat quickened, matching the frantic energy coursing through her thoughts. Did she truly have something of value to share? Would her narrative resonate with an audience larger and more critical than she had ever faced? She closed her eyes, momentarily retreating into her mind, where memories of childhood dreams and timid aspirations danced like shadows. Sharing her story had always been an act of reclamation, a chance to define herself outside the opinions of others. Yet now it felt like stepping into a spotlight that demanded perfection. The question pulsed in her mind. What if she faltered? What if, in trying to assert herself, she instead exposed her insecurities? Moments later, a sudden resolve flickered alive within her. She would use this opportunity to distill her narrative with clarity and conviction, allowing each word to serve as both armor and beacon. Maya began drafting notes, structuring her thoughts around key themes: the quest for belonging, the courage to defy social conventions, and what it means to create a family in unconventional ways. She felt herself transforming, each bullet point solidifying her goals rather than undermining her resolve. The clock ticked onward, and she became lost in her preparations. As she crafted her story, her internal dialogue shifted from doubt to an empowering affirmation of what she had done. This was not merely about the concept of buying a dad, but rather about the quest for acceptance and understanding in a world that often judged without seeking context. Driven by a newfound purpose, Maya recognized that her audience would want the truth behind her journey, not some polished facade. With each sentence, she dispelled the fog of doubt. She reframed the idea of vulnerability, embracing it as a source of strength rather than a weakness. As she worked, her mind flooded with ideas inspired by the online dialogues she had engaged in after publishing her blog post. The points of contention, the struggles voiced by others, and even the less-than-kind comments served as fuel. Each response transformed from a potential critique into a stepping stone toward deeper understanding and connection. Maya felt a connection with those who, like her, navigated the complexities of unconventional desires and dreams. By the time she finished her notes, a mix of anxiety and excitement buzzed through her. This was no longer just about her story. It was about igniting a conversation that challenged societal norms and encouraged others to share their truths. It was a chance to lead rather than shadow. An unexpected challenge arose when Maya considered the possibility of engaging with live questions from listeners. The thought of facing real-time critique made knots form in her stomach, the suffocating weight of scrutiny nearly paralyzing her. After some internal wrestling, she decided this was essential. Embracing questions would showcase her willingness to engage honestly, reflecting the essence of her journey. With renewed determination, she rehearsed responding to potential questions in her mind, visualizing herself navigating both agreement and opposition with poise. How would she articulate her truth when met with disbelief or harsh realities? Would she maintain her grace, shattering the stereotype of defensiveness that often cloaked passionate voices? Maya took a deep breath, recognizing that uncertainty was part of the process. If she could face the vitriol of online comments, she could surely navigate the complexities of a live audience. Her aspiration to rise above judgment no longer felt just like an ambition. It had morphed into a necessity. As the day of the podcast approached, anticipation transformed into an eager curiosity. What confirmation awaited her on the other side? Would vulnerability truly empower her as she envisioned? The realization that she had a platform and perhaps even a responsibility filled her with a quiet sense of clarity. Yet with each passing moment, the underlying truth gripped her. The greater the vulnerability, the greater the risk. What if this podcast marked a turning point, one that either escalated her fears or propelled her into a realm of success? The time had come to face the unknown, and as she lay in bed that night, her mind buzzed with possibilities. Would she step into her power, or would the shadows of doubt pull her back? The sun rose the following day, casting a tentative light that slipped through Maya's curtains, illuminating the chaos of her room. The cluttered space mirrored her mind, filled with half-formed ideas and remnants of past projects. Today, everything would change, or so she hoped. The clock ticked ominously, each second echoing the urgency of her impending podcast appearance. As she dragged herself out of bed, the familiar grip of anxiety clawed at her chest. She showered, the warm water acting as a brief refuge from the self-doubt swirling in her mind. Each droplet felt like a reminder of her inadequacies. Why should anyone listen to her? What made her story worthy of investigation? Yet, as the water cascaded down, she submerged the voices of doubt. Today was not about them. Today was about her narrative. After tossing on clothes that felt both too tight and too loose with the weight of expectation, she settled at her desk once more, poised to review her notes. On the surface, the words seemed confident. Beneath that veneer lay the nerve-wracking fear of being misunderstood. She realized that this was a deeper issue. It wasn't merely the potential for external judgment that unnerved her, but the fear of her own self-judgment. She took a deep breath and opened a blank document to write a short introduction for the podcast. The blinking cursor seemed to mock her, daring her to articulate the very essence of her experiences. Would she be able to convey the nuance of her story? Her thoughts drifted to that pivotal moment when she first contemplated buying a dad, a concept that had been both liberating and stigmatized. Navigating this gray area felt daunting. Could she illuminate the complexity of that decision? Maya began writing. The words flowed more freely as she reflected on the stares, the whispers, and the judgments, and the better part of herself began to appear. She came to understand that the juxtaposition of hope and despair in her narrative was what made it compelling. Each keystroke felt like a step toward emancipation from the shackles of her insecurities. Time slipped away faster than she anticipated. It was almost time to leave for the podcast recording studio. The mirror became her final audience as she reminded herself of her resolve, repeating affirmations that felt foreign and strange yet necessary. I am worthy. My story matters. However, that tenacity was quickly punctured by a sudden chill of realization. This would be live. No edits, no do-overs. Each second would be an opportunity for either affirmation or criticism. She imagined the questions she might face, the skeptical tones of the listeners, and what it might feel like to falter under pressure. What if she stumbled? What if her voice cracked in the most critical moment? But then, an uncanny sense of clarity emerged as she reflected on her journey. She recognized that perhaps the crucible of confrontation would ignite her true potential. Maybe, in articulating her struggles, she would not just be facing judgment, but inviting curiosity, creating pathways for conversation that extended beyond her personal experiences. As she approached the studio, her gut twisted with anxiety, but determination surged in tandem. Maya understood that this wasn't just an opportunity to share her truth, but to challenge listeners to confront their biases and expand their understanding of familial love. With the microphone set before her and the host smiling encouragingly, everything around her faded, and it was as if time stood still. It all hinged on this moment, the moment she would reclaim her narrative. She took a breath, feeling grounded in her purpose, bracing herself for the questions awaiting her. What she didn't know was that the first question would unearth emotions she thought she had compartmentalized, pushing her into an even deeper exploration of her identity than she'd ever anticipated. How could she articulate the loss that had driven her desire for a father figure when the very memory of that void still felt raw? But there was no backing out now. The moment had arrived for her voice to be lifted, setting the stage for transformations she could never have imagined. Would she find liberation through vulnerability, or would the echoes of the past come crashing down, leaving shadows instead of light? Maya's heart thundered as the host leaned in, asking the first question with an earnest curiosity that felt both inviting and frightening. So, Maya, tell us about the moment you realized you wanted to buy a dad. An invisible hand squeezed her throat, and she struggled to find her voice, grappling with a myriad of memories. Flashes of her childhood crossed her mind, the absent father figure, the yearning gaze of a little girl on playground swings watching happy families pass by, and the aching void that had haunted her ever since. But she refused to let nostalgia dictate her narrative. She could reshape it. "I think it started when I was really young," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I remember being at school, and everyone had one of those perfect dads. Mine wasn't around. I thought if I could just find someone who could fill that role, I might feel whole." It was an admission steeped in a mixture of vulnerability and strength. As she spoke, the tightening in her chest began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of determination. Each word she voiced was an unshackle, a means to frame her pain as something significant. The audience was silent, absorbed in her shared experiences, and that silence ignited a deeper resolve within her. "I explored unconventional routes, like the idea of hiring someone to take on that role," she continued, pressing on despite the quiver in her voice. "Some might see it as transactional, but I see it as innovative, seeking connection in a world where relationships can often feel broken." The weight of authenticity carried her along, and she could feel a shift happening not just in her, but in the atmosphere around her. With every question, Maya felt an expanding realization. This was not merely a conversation about her choices, but a reflection on societal norms. She could sense the cautious curiosity from the listeners. Her fears of judgment morphed into a shared understanding, and perhaps even solidarity. Suddenly, she realized the power of her narrative, not in the tragedy of her missing father, but in her courage to redefine familial love. She was taking her audience on a journey, not shying away from her truth, but boldly standing in it. It dawned on her that this wasn't just her podcast appearance. It could forge a bridge for others grappling with silence in their own lives. By the time the host asked about the specific challenges she faced in making such an unusual choice, her thoughts sharpened with clarity. The hardest part was confronting how society stigmatizes unconventional family structures. It felt like swimming against a current. There were always whispers, questions about my intentions, and whether I truly understood what I was yearning for. As the discussion unfolded, Maya discovered a new sense of agency within herself. Here was an opportunity not only to unveil her story, but to dissect the cultural implications. She leaned into her insights, offering reflections on love, loss, and the beauty of defying expectations. Yet, even as she navigated this powerful dialogue, a surge of self-reflection crept in. Would she find herself diminished through this exposure, or instead liberated? The very thought of stepping beyond the familiar shadows into the light felt exhilarating yet terrifying. As the segment approached its conclusion, a vulnerable yet fierce resolve settled over her. The final question pierced through her self-doubt like a bolt of lightning. "Maya, who is the father figure you never had in your life?" At that moment, uncertainty mingled with possibility. She could answer with a rehearsed narrative, or she could delve into a raw truth that could illuminate not only her own path, but provide clarity for others. As she opened her mouth to respond, Maya felt both trepidation and exhilaration flooding through her. This wasn't only a question about her past, it was an invitation to reshape her narrative into one of empowerment. What would she choose to reveal? Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle upon her. She could choose to speak about the absence, the longing, and the ache that had colored her childhood. Or she could embrace this opportunity to redefine what that absence had meant for her growth. The truth is, she began, her voice steady now and resonating with clarity, the father figure I never had didn't define me. Rather, it propelled me to become a stronger version of who I am today. I learned to cultivate resilience, to seek connections with those who genuinely support and uplift me. As she spoke, it felt as if a dam within her burst open, allowing a torrent of emotions, joy mixed with sorrow. I've found mentors, friends, and allies who have stepped into my life. They may not wear the title of dad, but they embody what family means: love, support, and belief in one another. The host nodded, captivated, as did the audience, who seemed to be leaning in, absorbing her every word. In that instant, Maya realized that sharing her narrative was not merely an act of self-disclosure. It was an invitation for others to reconcile their fragmented identities. She had transformed from the girl yearning for familial validation to the woman redefining it on her terms. Instead of focusing solely on what I lacked, I started embracing what I have, she continued with newfound vigor. I've redirected my energy into building connections that matter, creating a life where love manifests in many forms. It has made me stronger. Maya's heart swelled with a sense of agency. Each word spoken punctuated her evolution from passive observer to active participant in her narrative. Recognition washed over her, and she could sense the impact of her honesty echoing in the studio. The myriad of threads that had once bound her to a painful past were unwinding, replaced by vibrant new connections forged through understanding. The dialogue shifted naturally in synergy with Maya's answers. The audience posed thoughtful inquiries, fostering a dialogue that felt organic and open-hearted. As she shared lessons learned, the importance of self-acceptance, and the beauty of unconventional connections, each response became a brushstroke in a profound portrait of her journey. When the segment concluded and the applause wrapped around her like a warm embrace, Maya felt euphoric. She had not only shared her story, she had embodied the essence of self-growth and authenticity. This was who she had become, a young woman willing to embrace her complexities and emerging from the shadows of doubt into clarity. Once the live recording was over, she realized she had conquered something immensely significant. This experience marked not just a moment of expression, but a culmination of growth that encompassed her ambitions, fears, and dreams. She had faced the ghosts of her past, and instead of yielding to them, she had woven them into a narrative of empowerment. In the hours that followed, the digital response flowed in cascades. Supportive messages flooded her inbox. People reached out to share their stories, and a growing community formed around their shared experiences. Maya felt overwhelmed by the validation that swept through her. Being recognized for her courage meant more than she could articulate. She was no longer just the girl without a dad, but a woman whose voice echoed the struggles of many and inspired conversations that mattered. Reflecting on her journey, she understood that she had achieved a real triumph. What started as a longing for connection became a thorough exploration of identity. This exploration lit flames of courage in others, igniting dialogues around family definitions, acceptance, and love. As she journeyed home, her skin tingled with a potent mix of excitement and accomplishment. She had earned not only respect, but also carved a solid position for herself as an authentic voice in an often colorful conversation. Her blog continued to resonate, but now it felt like it was being wielded as a tool for connection that would bring about change. And so Maya stepped into the world that evening with a lightness of heart, a buoyancy that reflected her authentic self. She was empowered by a sense of purpose that had transformed her. Where pizzazz once met uncertainty, clarity now filled every corner of her being. She would continue to learn, grow, and redefine what family meant, expanding her circle of connection and fostering the bonds that mattered most. In that celebratory certainty of self-discovery, she knew one thing undeniably: this was just the beginning. You need to subscribe now to experience more exclusive emotions like Maya's journey. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help foster more stories that empower. Comment your reactions and theories about Maya's courageous transformation below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to uplift those around you.